How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual profile on Jayson Tatum, the starting small forward for the Boston Celtics. I'm a player who's had a lot of success in the NBA, despite the fact that he's just turning 23 right now. And I think that at this point in his career, he's definitely going to be a player to watch for 2021 and the years going on. And I hope that the stats and the accolades and what he's been able to amass over his very short NBA career, I think justifies and kind of speaks for itself as to why he has an elite profile and why he is a two-time All-Star in his first, 4 seasons in the NBA. So just to give you a little bit of background, if you've never heard of him, he's about a 6'8", light-skinned shooting guard. I guess his game works mostly off of his shiftiness. He's incredibly smart. He has incredible footwork. He has a great jump shot, and he has a lot of confidence in himself. I think he's a young guy, and he's kind of already taken over the Celtics franchise. He's kind of like the go-to guy, and he's made a lot of clutch shots. I think that he can really only get better, and even if he were to level out right now and continue to play at this level for the rest of his NBA career, he'd probably be a Hall of Famer. So, just to give you a little bit of background, he's originally from St. Louis, and in Missouri. He was the Mr. Show Me Basketball, so I guess he was the Missouri's Mr. Basketball of the Year. He would go on to be named a McDonald's All-American and a Gatorade National Player of the Year. I guess that's how good he was in high school. He established himself as a good enough prospect to be ranked as a 5-star recruit and then be recruited to go play with Coach K at Duke University. And during his freshman season at Duke, he would miss the first 8 games of the season due to a foot injury. And I actually tried to go to one of the games at the very beginning, and he wasn't playing because of that foot injury. But of course, Jayson Tatum would go on. And of course, once he got started at Duke, there would kind of be no stop. There would be no stopping. I guess with Harry Giles going down to injury, Jayson Tatum would have to shoulder a lot more of the load than he thought he would going into this year. And in his freshman season, he would start 27 of the 29 games he would play in a season where Duke would end up finishing with a 28-9 record. They went 11-7 in the ACC, and they would end up losing in the round of 32. But during that season, Tatum would go on to average 16.8 points, 7.3 rebounds, 2 assists, just over a steal, and just over a block, averaging maybe about 30 minutes a game. He went on to shoot 45% from the field, 35% from 3, and almost 85% from the line during his freshman season. And while at Duke, he established himself as a good enough prospect to end up getting taken with the 3rd overall pick in the 2017 draft. And this is the draft where he was drafted behind Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball, both of which are no longer on the teams that they were originally drafted on. So Tatum, highest player drafted that's still remaining with his team. I think once he made it to the Celtics, he kind of hit the ground running. But even by the time he got there, he was already 13 All-ACC on the ACC All-Freshman team. And he just had more to prove of himself once he got to the NBA. And once he got there, he showed he could ball. In his age 19 season, he started every single game he played, and for the Celtics, by the way. But in his age 19 season, he would start 80 games, the only time in his career he'd ever start 80 games in a season before. And he would average 30.5 minutes in a season where the Boston Celtics would end up with the second best record in the Eastern Conference at 55-27. And this was during Kyrie Irving's season when he was there. And of course, this is when Gordon Hayward was balling there as well, and Jaylen Brown was a second-year player. But in the midst of all that, Jayson Tatum was able to average 13.9 points, 5 rebounds, an assist and a half, and about a steal a game. He shot 47.5% from the field, the best percentage he'd ever shoot from the field in his career. He shot 43.4% from 3, the best percentage he'd ever shoot from 3. And he shot 82.6% from the free throw line, shooting incredible percentages because he was able to get really good shots because that's how good that Boston Celtics team was. And once he made it to the playoffs, after being named to the All-Rookie First Team, the Boston Celtics would end up beating the Bucks in the first round 4-3. This is right before Giannis built the Bucks up. They beat the Sixers in the conference semis, and then of course they would lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 7, and this is when Jayson Tatum had established himself as one of the better players on the team. And then looking into what he did in the playoffs that season, he would average 18.5 points as a rookie at 19 years old, just to give a sense of how good he was. Or I guess that would be he would be 20 at the time, but within his first year, he established himself as a player who could start every single game, and once he had made it to the playoffs, he was slowly becoming that go-to guy, and this definitely transitioned into his second year on the team. And in his second year, in his age 20 season in 2018-19, he would start 79 games for a Boston Celtics team that would end up with a 49-33 record, with the fourth best record in the East. They had 6 less wins than the year prior because, of course, Kyrie had gone and Jayson Tatum had to step up a little bit and show that he was the guy. He was a guy that the Celtics could rely on a little bit. And in his second season in the league, Jayson Tatum would go on to average 15.7 points, a little 2 more points he did the previous season. He was able to up his rebounds per game from 5 to 6. His assists went up from 1.6 to 2.1. His steals went up a tick from 1 to 1.1, averaging 0.7 blocks. His field goal percentage dropped from about 47.5 to 45 as he went on to shoot 3 more shots a game. His 3-point numbers would end up going down from 43.4% to about 37.3. His free throw percentage would actually shoot up from about 82.6 to 85.5. And I mean, he was once again, his presence was once again starting to be felt, and as he was entering his age 21 season, he was starting to even show that he was that guy in the playoffs as well. That year in the playoffs, they would end up sweeping the Pacers, but then they would end up losing to the Bucks in the semifinals, and this is when Giannis Antetokounmpo won the MVP the first time. So, of course, there was no stopping this man on a mission. But a lot of this would transition into Jayson Tatum's third season in the NBA. And through his first 2 seasons, he was not an all-star yet. In his third year, he would be an all-star. In his third year in the NBA, he would start 66 games in a season that was shortened due to COVID, in a season that they would also end up playing in Orlando for the end of it, and then, of course, the playoffs. But this year, he would go on to average, he would go on to, or I guess in this season, the Boston Celtics would go on and finish with the 3rd best record in the East. And in this particular season, Jayson Tatum would up his scoring average from 15.7 points to 23.4 points. He upped his rebounds from 6 to 7. He upped his assists from 2.1 to 3. He upped his steals from 1.1 to 1.4. He upped his blocks from 0.7 to 0.9. He would shoot 5.5 more shots than he would the previous season, while keeping his field goal percentage at 45%, just like the previous season. He upped his 3-point shooting from 37.3 to 40.3 as he was able to increase his 3-pointers. He took 3 more 3-pointers a game. His free throws dropped from 85.5 to 81.2, but as in his ascent to being the guy for the team, he would go on to make his first All-Star team in his 3rd season in the NBA. And once they made the playoffs, the Celtics would end up sweeping the Sixers in the first round. They beat the Raptors by 7 in the second round in a very close one. And of course, Jayson Tatum would Jayson Tatum would be the main go-to guy for the Celtics in that series. And then they would end up losing the conference finals to the Miami Heat in 6 before the Heat lost to the Los Angeles Lakers last season. And this would really kind of lead into this season for Jayson Tatum. This season, Jayson Tatum started 30 games for a Boston Celtics team that's currently that's currently sitting 4th in the Eastern Conference. They sit 5 games out of first place. They sit 3 games behind Milwaukee. They're currently on a 3-game winning streak, and Jayson Tatum is the leading scorer for that team. And he and Jaylen Brown are starting to become the wing duo that a lot of Boston Celtics fans expected them to be. But Jayson Tatum, I think, is probably a slight hair better, despite the fact that he's a year younger. And this season, in the 30 games he's played, he's upping his points per game average from 23.4 in his first All-Star season to 24.9. His rebounds are staying at about 7. His assists are jumping up from 3 to 4.4. His steals are at about 1.3, which is really close to what it was last year. His blocks are dipping from 0.9 to 0.5. And from the field, his field goal percentage is dropping from 45 to 43. His three-point percentage dropping from 40.3 to 36.4, and his free throws are actually increasing. He's shooting the best from the free throw line that he's ever shot in his career, shooting 87.7% from the free throw line. And of course, with the Boston Celtics in playoff position, Jayson Tatum, I think, is doing his job incredibly well. And the Boston Celtics are slated to play the Toronto Raptors tomorrow, just to try to, just to keep where they are. And I think a lot of the Celtics' success falls on Jayson Tatum, and of course it makes sense because he would go on to be named to his second All-Star team not that long ago. And this is a player that established himself as an All-NBA third-team player, as one of the best 15 players in the game. The most recent season where they logged it, and he might end up, he could see himself making another All-NBA team this year, as he is one of the most important players on one of the best teams in the NBA. And with that said, I think a lot of his numbers and his accolades speak for themselves. Of course, his career isn't even close to being finished. I would say he's years out from even peaking out and maxing out at his prime. But for the way he's developed into this player that can be relied on at such a young age, and I think he's progressing and getting better every year. That's why I think Jayson Tatum is a good player to keep your eye on. And it's not because he went to the same school that I currently go to. It's because I actually genuinely think that Jayson Tatum will go on to be one of the best Duke players to ever play in the NBA. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to my piece. I hope all is well. Once again, today is March 3rd, 2021. Happy 23rd birthday to Jayson Tatum. And I want to thank everyone once again for listening to all 12 minutes of this piece. And if you ever get a chance to watch Jayson Tatum, or I call him Jason Gratum, he's currently wearing number 0 for the Boston Celtics, and you might see them. If you ever get a chance to watch him in the regular season or in the playoffs, you more than likely will see Jayson Tatum bust a couple moves, hit a couple great shots, and he's just a really fun, artistic player to watch. Once again, thank you for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out.